Hello. The criminal justice system is set up in a certain way to ensure that each person is given the same set of rules when faced with a criminal charge, from the beginning to the very end. Each step in the criminal process has its own purpose and goals. We will use the state of Grand versus Smith case to walk through each of these steps and evaluate what each possible outcome could be. The first step in the criminal justice system would be when a person is arrested for a crime. According to Missouri Supreme Court Criminal Procedure Rule, Section 22, an arrest is made when there is an indictment charging the person of a crime based on possible cause. The police cannot arrest anyone without a signed warrant. Warrants must be signed by a judge, or a judge can give a county clerk the authority to sign the warrant in behalf of themselves. Once the arrest has been made, the arrestee must appear in front of the judge within the first 48 hours, except if there is a weekend or holiday, for an arraignment. In the case mentioned above, Tom Smith was accused of murder or involuntary manslaughter, possession of a controlled substance, and possession of a controlled substance with the intent to distribute or sell. The probable cause that was used for the indictment would have been the narcotics in his possession at the time of Keller's death and the witnesses present. Based on the evidence from the police investigation, an arrest was imminent. Once an arrest has been made, the next step in the criminal system is the arraignment hearing, which according to Missouri Supreme Court Criminal Procedure Rule 24.01 is where the arrestee has the first hearing in front of a judge within the first 48 hours, except if there's a holiday or a weekend. The charges against the arrestee are read to them with a possible punishment. The arrestee does not have to enter a guilty plea at this time. Missouri Supreme Court Criminal Procedure Rule 24 pertains to the setting of bail, which is generally done at the arraignment hearing. Missouri Supreme Court Criminal Procedure Rule 37.15 states that any person arrested is entitled for a hearing to determine if they are eligible for bail or not. Bail is not used to punish the accused, but to enforce the criminal laws and to ensure that the arrestee attends any future hearings. A judge may take into consideration past criminal activities when it comes to determine if someone is eligible for bail and what the bail may consist of. They will also base this off of any of the charges that are presented in front of them. In the Smith case, the possibility of bail would depend on any past charges against Smith, as well as the charges presented, which were murder or manslaughter. With the murder or involuntary manslaughter charges and drug charges, the judge agrees to bail. There would be stiff monetary fees and other conditions. Most often with murder charges, bail is not granted as the arrestee is considered a danger to society, which in this case, because of the second-degree murder and involuntary manslaughter, Smith would possibly not be granted bail. A prosecutor must file criminal charges against the arrestee within 10 days of the arraignment hearing. These are the list of all pending charges, the elements of each charge, the date of each charge, and the possible punishments. Missouri Supreme Court Criminal Procedure Rule 23.01. This is where the prosecutor lists the charges of murder in the second degree, involuntary manslaughter, the possession of a controlled substance, and in possession of a controlled substance with the intent to sell. The prosecutor would also state that each charge poses as a punishment. The grand jury is the next step in the criminal justice system. Missouri Supreme Court Criminal Procedure Section 1, Section 16, and Missouri Revised Statute 540.031 states the grand jury consists of 12 people or peers, and their job is to investigate the evidence and witnesses to determine if there is enough for the prosecution to move forward in their case. They also have the power to return an indictment or to return no indictment. In the Smith case, this is the set of people who will be deciding the factors to determine if there's enough for the prosecution to move forward with their case. If they did not indict Smith, then the prosecution must drop the charges. Missouri Supreme Court Criminal Procedure 22.09 states that deals with the preliminary hearing stage of the criminal justice system. This hearing must be held within a reasonable time frame, but no later than 30 days following the defendant's initial arraignment hearing, and no longer, if they are remanded in custody, no later than 60 days if the defendant is out on bail. Missouri Revised Statute 544.250 states that if the prosecution cannot file charges unless the defendant has been accorded the right to a preliminary examination before a judge. This is where the defendant learns more of what the prosecution may have on them. In the Smith case, due to the high possibility of Smith not being granted bail at the arraignment hearing, the hearing would be held within 30 days of the arraignment hearing. After the preliminary hearing, the prosecution may try to get the defense to enter a plea bargain. Most prosecutors try to get out of going to trial by offering the defense the opportunity to plead guilty to a lesser charge and serve a lesser sentence. The prosecution may offer Smith the charge of involuntary manslaughter versus the charge of murder in the second degree. In the Smith case, Smith would be wise to take this plea as it is a lesser charge with a lesser punishment. If Smith agrees to a plea bargain, they forfeit their right to appeal. If he doesn't agree, then he ends up facing the possibility of actually being found guilty of murder in the second degree versus the involuntary manslaughter. Discovery is the process where both sides request documents and protection of evidence. Missouri Supreme Court Criminal Procedure Rule 25.02 is where the written request or motion for discovery of materials and information are provided by 25.03a. This can be made from 14 to 20 days after the initial appearance in front of the judge. They also must be answered within 14 days of when the receiving party receives them. For the request from the defense, the prosecution would have to disclose the arrest reports, the incident reports, the investigation reports, either or both the written or recorded statements made by the defendant, any documents, photographs, videos, electronic communications, or data related to the offenses or charges. In the Smith case, the defense would request all of the above evidence from the prosecution. They would use this evidence to try to get the charges dropped if the defense finds something in the evidence that would prove that their client is innocent. Once all evidence has been gathered and all discovery has been obtained, the next step in the criminal justice system is trial. Missouri Supreme Court Criminal Procedure Rule 27 deals with this stage of the system. A trial can be either in front of a jury of one's peers, which is called a trial by jury, or just in front of the judge, which is called a bench trial. Missouri Revised Statute 546.07 gives the outline of how a trial is to proceed. The prosecution usually starts the trial by stating their claim, and the defense then states their defense. And if it's by jury trial, the jury is given written instructions, and either the judge in a bench trial or the jury in a trial jury or a jury trial issues their verdicts at the very end. Smith can either waive the right to a jury trial and go in front of the judge instead. Once the defendant goes to a trial and is found guilty, the last stage of the criminal justice system is the sentencing phase. This is where the defendant is issued its punishment. Missouri Revised Statute 557.011 has a list of sentencing rules that a judge must follow. The defendant must be present at this stage and notified of their right to appeal. Smith could face anywhere from 5 to 7 years to 25 years to life or death, as well as whatever time the judge may wish to impose for the drug charges.